Before we get started, I have an exciting announcement. We are launching a line of Head South pleasure provisions, products designed to decrease friction and enhance connection. Discover a new level of intimacy and connection with Head South's upcoming range of premium sexual wellness products, including 2 intimacy serums and a luxurious massage oil. Join our waitlist today and enjoy an exclusive 15% off on your first order. You can find the link in our show notes and head over to headsouth.world. And now let's start the episode.
You're listening to Head South Radio with your host, Kat Meyer, a podcast dedicated to prioritizing pleasure and removing the stigma and shame around sex. We're here to be curious and have an open conversation about sexual health and relational wellness. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes. The information discussed is not a substitute for professional medical advice.
Hi there, I'm your host, Kat Meyer, and on today's episode we have Dr. Mary Tracey. Dr. Tracey studied biology with a minor in chemistry at Southern Connecticut State University. It was during her undergraduate studies that her passion for health was ignited. Dr. Tracey started to acknowledge the incredible need for public education in order for people to take back control of their health. Thus, Dr. Tracey decided to pursue her career as a naturopathic doctor. Receiving her medical degree from the University of Bridgeport College of Naturopathic Medicine, Dr. Tracey continued her education to receive a Master's of Science in Traditional Chinese Medicine from East West College of Natural Medicine. During her educational pursuits, Dr. Tracey has acquired valuable knowledge pertaining to inner workings of the human body, along with methods to promote long-term states of health and wellness. Her areas of focus include women's health, pain management, and chronic disease intervention. In this episode, I had the pleasure of discussing with Mary the rhythms and cycles of the female body, relational and inclusive sex education, and what is perimenopause. We invite you to show your support by leaving a review on Apple or Spotify. Your feedback fuels our growth, and we're incredibly grateful for it. If this episode resonates with you or someone you know, don't hesitate to share it and spread the word on your social media. So without further ado, prepare yourself for an enriching episode that promises to broaden horizons and foster understanding. I hope you enjoy this episode. So just to get started, we'll kind of just ground ourselves, take a few breaths, settle into this beautiful Sunday morning. And close your eyes and just feel your sit bones start to grow tall through the crown of your head, finding integrity with your spine. And this might be the first time this morning you've acknowledged your breath, or maybe you've already meditated. Wherever you're at, just taking a moment to witness your breath. Get a sense of where energetically you are. Just taking a note of how you feel. And just setting attention for this conversation, just a personal acknowledgement of something you would like to achieve as we share our curiosity, our wisdom. And then when you're ready, you can just start to blink your eyes open, take in the light, take in your space. Hi, Dr. Mary.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Mm-hmm.
So to get started, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about who you are. So maybe a little background about where you grew up, where you live now. Do you have any pets? Do you have, a partner? And then also a little bit about your professional life.
Sure. So I'm from Connecticut, and that's where I live currently. I grew up in like a very small, tiny town in Connecticut. And basically I come from like a huge family. There's actually 7 of us. And just a little bit of my background. I was raised in a very like religious family, very like holistic minded in terms of nutrition and health and so on and so forth. And, the way that I grew up very much influenced my path towards becoming like a naturopathic doctor. And I currently practice as a naturopathic doctor, again, in Connecticut. And I live with my partner. We just got engaged. Yay. And,
Yay.
So mainly in my practice, I'm dealing with women of all backgrounds, and I combine like supplements, herbs, nutritional advice to help people just really optimize their health. And I basically just really try to help people every day. So that's really basically about my background. And yeah.
Cool. So before we jump into the topic at hand, I wanted to also do a few little icebreakers. We were introduced through a mutual person in our lives, somebody that I've known since high school and who happens to be your partner and is now engaged to you. Congratulations to you both for that. But I wanted to kind of just do a little warm up, do some icebreaker questions, and then we'll jump into the topic. And so to start, did you play any sports growing up?
No sports. Nope.
What's your favorite scent?
Ooh, my favorite scent is probably like lavender is one of my favorite scents, I would have to say.
Are you a morning or a night person?
Probably like a late morning person, like around now, like 10 a.m., 11. Yeah.
Mhm.
hmm
What shows are you into right now? Like, what are you watching or binging?
I have some guilty pleasures. Like I love like the dating shows.
Uh-huh.
So like will constantly like watch like Married at First Sight or like Indian Matchmaker or like these are my guilty pleasures. We also just finished like all of the Star Wars series, so that was pretty interesting. Me and my partner did that recently, so pretty much pretty eclectic mix of things, I guess you would say.
Yeah. I've never watched I mean, I would say it was about 2012 now. It's the only New Year's resolution I've ever kept was I decided to stop watching reality television. And so I've never seen any of these new iterations. Like I did watch The Bachelor at a certain point and like the dancing shows, the competitions. I was a big Project Runway fan. But then in 2012, I was like, my brain doesn't like this. And I know for some people, like their brain, like this is a great way to kind of shut your brain down or kind of like, not use your brain differently and kind of just absorb whatever is like a distraction in a good way for reality television. But for me, it was like not feeling good.
Understandable.
Yeah.
It is like it's usually when I'm like charting and I need something in the background, and I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
this is going in the background. I don't have to think about it. It doesn't require a lot of brain work while I'm doing the other brain work.
And then so that's funny because mine is like Star Wars, Game of Thrones is like if I'm doing, like if I'm knitting, that's like in the background, just totally those series. What is your favorite season?
Ooh, I love spring. Has to be my favorite season, especially in New England. Just like that mild temperature, things are starting to grow. Like definitely spring. Yeah.
I know I was actually just talking to my partner about how he sent me a video and he's out in Long Island on a farm. And so he was talking about like how dewy and fresh it was feeling this morning. And he was just like drinking his coffee outside. And I was like, oh, I love that.
Yes.
Like that is such a nice time of year. Like my favorite season's fall, but spring in the morning is so like you just feel so awake and
Yeah.
alive and refreshed. It's such a refreshing feeling of spring. So when is your birthday?
My birthday's actually December 17th. So I'm a winter baby.
You're a Sagittarius too,
Yes, I
right?
am.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah. Because sometimes I feel like some people like they like their season,
Yeah.
but
True.
yeah,
No,
I'm a
I was
I'm a
born.
July like cusp like Cancer cusp Leo, and I do love summer, but that time of year is just sweltering and humid and kind of disgusting. And so yeah, I tend to lean into fall and really enjoy that the crispness of fall, but
Yeah.
I can appreciate all seasons for
Yeah.
sure.
Same. Mhm.
Who is your celebrity crush?
Can't say that I have one right now. To be honest.
Mhm.
No.
Fair enough. Okay, so then let's talk about what was sex education like for you growing up?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I would say that a lot of the sex education I got was probably, I think, when we watched that video in school. Like, my parents definitely did not talk about sex growing up. It wasn't a conversation that was ever had. It was just like life discovery, learning about it in school and then hearing about it from friends, that kind of experience. But like when you talk about like formal education, probably like the video in like, what was it, like fourth or fifth grade? I don't even
Yeah,
remember.
probably fifth grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Girls go in a separate room than the boys, and we're all like talking about it and nervous to watch it.
Yeah. No, I remember, like, we had to do, like, permissions. I went to a Catholic school on top of it, so we had to have, like, permission slips and maybe, like, 1 or 2 kids, their parents wouldn't even allow them to view the video. So they had to, like, go to the gym or go to the library, and then, like, exactly that, they gender separated us, and it's kind of funny too because it's like, I never knew what they showed the boys. Like, I still don't know
Yeah.
what they showed the boys, and it's kind of I've been kind of thinking a lot about this with Head South and how not much has changed. So in the conversations I've had with sex educators who are working in the school systems, there's not much that's changed from those videos from the late 90s, early 2000s of, they're still separating the genders. They're still very specifically just talking about, like, at that age, it's puberty. It's not necessarily sex. It's, reproductive health and what's going on in our bodies, and mostly focused on puberty. And then, ninth grade is where they, I believe, start introducing more sex, but like preventative, like preventing STIs, preventing pregnancies. And funnily enough, I was sitting in a coffee shop yesterday working, and there was these 3 girls who were probably 11th or 12th grade. And I overheard their conversation, and they were talking about how they were annoyed that they are only getting their sex education as they're going into 12th grade. And
Wow.
I, like, so badly wanted to jump in on the conversation because I totally get it. They were like, all of us are already sexually active and no one's
Right.
been talking to us. Like, they were so frustrated and kind of just, like, irritated of, like, oh, cool, you're going to put some condoms in the bathroom. Like, that was kind of their talking point, but they were getting it in 12th grade. And it often, some things that I like to envision for, the evolution of sex education is pleasure and also relational. So including all genders and everyone viewing these films, videos, these talks together
Together,
to
yes.
understand.
I love
So
that.
I'm also curious as to, like, how would you envision sex education?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important because I feel like, yes, we learn about puberty, like you mentioned, but we're also like almost like scared into thinking like we can't be sexually active. And if we do, then we're going to be suddenly pregnant at all times of the month, you know? So like I envision it where it's like, no, women are taught to learn the rhythm of, or women or people who have ovaries, so on and so forth, are taught the rhythm of their body, to look at it more like just like how we learn about pulse and breathing rate and all of that, to know that we are in good health. Like, so I wish that it was more attached to like the actual experience we have of our bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit blanketed. Like, it's just like, don't or fear and be scared. Cause that's the thing is, like, I didn't learn that to, like, what you just said of, like, oh, you can't get pregnant by, like, a guy just looking at you. Cause that's how they treat it. Like, don't even let men look at you. Anyone who has sperm, do not let them, like, gaze at you long enough because you will get pregnant. Like, that's just kind of how that's presented to us, especially us separated into the female girls' room, of just being so scared of any fluid that comes out
Yeah.
of a male body. And
Like run.
I think there's, like, so much to that of, like, then we don't even I don't even recall learning about my whole cycle. Like, I knew I was gonna bleed, and I knew what products to use, tampons, pads, cups. And a lot of that came from my mother or my sister, and not through my sexual education, like my formal school-based sexual education. And then learning about cycle and the actual flow of the different phases didn't come until, like, my late 20s, early 30s, through girlfriends and through me pushing and finding holistic practitioners like yourself who are willing to have these conversations and help educate me. And working and talking with a lot of people like yourself in this field, I'm finding a lot of people who are educating women in their 30s as they're going through fertility on their menstrual cycles.
Yeah, they like wait till that's the only time it's important, is when you're trying to get pregnant. It's like, what?
Yes.
Why didn't anyone tell me about this whole process going on in my body? And I think that's frustrating for a lot of people. And And I think it's important for both or all genders to learn about the different functions of the body, and that's how we will feel more supported in like relationships and everything like that. I think there's some studies that show like the more like other genders know about our premenstrual experience, the better that we could go through that experience because we feel supported. You know what I mean? So it's like that'd be so helpful, just relationally, you know? So
Interrelationally,
yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. I even think in the work setting, being able to just say, like, "I have period cramps," or, like, I'm loving seeing right now, like, countries like Spain are offering menstruation breaks, time off, leave, being able to work from home, and it becoming more common to discuss it openly versus, like, stigmatized and hiding it. I mean, for years, I would be like, "Oh, I have migraine," or "I'm sick." I very rarely get sick. It's like once a year or twice a year. Barely. I'm not like someone who's like constantly sick with colds or flus. And I remember periods of time when I'd be working and be like, "Oh, I have the flu again," but it was actually just endometriosis and really painful cramps.
Oh my god,
But
yeah.
not being able to like communicate that in like a work setting and feel like, "Oh yeah, that's totally fine and you take care of yourself." And I think it's kind of at the early stages of sex education, if this was introduced instead of boy room, girl room, and then it moved through like in college and in work settings, conversations around this is healthcare. It's not like something that should be hidden and then all of a sudden for heterosexual couples or certain people who are trying to have babies, that's when the next stage of sex education comes in. And that's like 15 to 20-year difference.
Yeah, oh my goodness. And then not to mention, like you were mentioning having, like, those migraines and things like that, and I think because we don't talk about it or because in the past we didn't talk about it, we normalize a lot of stuff that maybe wasn't normal. Like, "Oh, like, I can't go anywhere the first day of my period." That's not normal. Like, there's something else there or I'm popping, like, ibuprofen every day a week before my period. Some women have to do that, some women have to do that, but not knowing why you have to do that, I think is an important caveat,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I think another conversation that comes up is like for us and our generation of we were put on birth control very early without giving the full context of like what long-term hormonal birth control looks like for our bodies, or the fact that like we're bleeding, but that's not actually our period, that's not actually our cycle, is a very common thing that I'm learning through conversations with practitioners of them working with women on relearning their cycle. So to the point of like, oh yeah, now they're going into fertility stages or noticing some issues that were always thought as common. And then it's like, oh no, I have PCOS, I have endometriosis, and kind of then finding practitioners to help support them through these stages. And then learning like, you have not had a cycle since you were probably 15 or 16. Like you haven't had a full menstrual cycle experience. And so your body doesn't even know. So what do you advise? I'm sure you have patients who come in to see you during that stage of life or that period of time when they're coming off of hormonal birth control. What are some of the things you recommend?
Oh, yeah, so I think a lot of people are scared because imagine being, like, 12 and going through so much pain and discomfort that, yes, you were put on birth control and thinking now at, like, 32 that I can't get off of this birth control because I remember how awful my periods were back then, and not realizing your body's completely different than than it is when you were 12. And so, like, I think there's an aspect of teaching people to trust their bodies. It's kind of shocking to be like, I could just go off a medication I've been on for 10, 20 even years. Yes, it's okay. Like, you just stop. Yes, there's certain things that we could do to make sure that that transition is smoother, whether it's certain herbals or, making sure that your nutrition is in a good place or your digestion's in a good place to help support your body through that transition because it really is a transition. But yeah, so those are some of the things I might recommend, whether it's like herbs, you know, just optimizing your health before you get to that point so you're not so scared to come off.
Right. Another thing I would recommend, just because I had gone through that process when I was 27, 28 of coming off of hormonal birth control and switching to tracking methods. So not only just tracking your period, But I think we talked in a previous conversation about just tracking your health and like keeping a journal about symptoms that you might not even realize are symptoms of transition, and kind of then bringing these to, whether it's your doctor, your Chinese medicine practitioner, your herbalist, whoever you're working with, your team of care providers, and bringing these things to them of like changes in appetite, changes in mood. And this is my next question is, within that, I've always found that having partners who were supportive and like intuitive and not being like insensitive to my menstrual cycle, PMS, my endometriosis, and very concerned, would often give me feedback and like notice things about my symptoms that I might not notice. And so having partners. So my question is, how can a partner support through transition periods? So whether it's transitioning through a fertility process, transitioning through just PMS, menstrual stuff that comes up. Because our menstrual cycle, as you mentioned, even whether you're on hormonal birth control or you're not, from 12 to 20 to 28 to 30 to 40, it's different. It evolves and changes. It changes like where you live, environmentally, who you're like around as well. There's so many fluctuations in our hormones and in our body. So how can a partner support someone through those transitions?
No, that's a great question. And I think it's a matter of like making sure that as a partner that you educate yourself about women's health too, or if you're dating or with somebody who has ovaries, like knowing that there's these certain cycles that we go through throughout the month. And there's so many resources, whether it's like your podcast, YouTube, like you want to find, of course, people who are qualified to speak on it, but like definitely just learning and being curious and asking questions and even offering that, oh, how could I support you? What you're going through, just asking that simple question, I think is important. But I wish, like you said, back in like 5th grade and 9th grade, when we were learning all this in school, we were all together and not separated because that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a part of life skills, just relational wellness and knowing how to relate to someone, whether you're experiencing it or not.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I feel like my my fiance knows my cycle better than me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice to have that kind of support. Yeah, I've definitely had partners like that who like knew my cycle, and I'd be like, "What? Really?" And it's helpful. It feels really good. And so we're lucky enough to have had partners or have partners who are like that. And sometimes it is intuitive, and other times it's a skill to be learned, how to relate to somebody else and how to hold space for them and how to kind of nurture and support them. Support is not always a given thing to know how to do. We're not born knowing how to do that. Let's take a quick break. Are you tired of the hormonal roller coaster that comes with birth control pills? 11 years ago, I decided to ditch hormonal birth control and embark on a journey to find a more natural alternative. Over the years, I've used condoms, calendar tracking methods, and withdrawal, which can sometimes be pretty risky and stress-inducing practices. However, I've discovered a game changer, Natural Cycles. It's an FDA-cleared birth control app that has brought me peace of mind like never before. Whether you're planning or preventing pregnancy, Natural Cycles has got your back. Let's talk about numbers for a moment, even though I hate numbers. Natural Cycles is 98% effective when used properly. And here's the best part. You're not putting any extra hormones into your body. It's all about understanding your cycle and making informed decisions. Ready to start your hormone-free birth control journey? Use the link in our episode description to get 15% off the annual subscription for Natural Cycles. That's right, 15% off to take charge of your reproductive health in a natural and effective way. Say goodbye to those hormonal ups and downs and hello to a birth control approach that aligns with your body. And now back to our episode. I wanted to come into another stage of life for people with ovaries and who menstruate is perimenopause, which you were the first time I had ever heard this phrase was in a conversation I had with you on a phone call. And I was like, wait, what? And I asked you, and if you wouldn't mind differentiating menopause and perimenopause, because for me, and I think a lot of people, we always hear the term menopause. And that's what I always thought was the thing. And I didn't even know a thing called perimenopause existed. I actually thought perimenopause meant early menopause, and we can kind of talk about that too. But if you wouldn't mind, Dr. Mary, just giving us a little rundown of what is perimenopause What is menopause and what is this phase and what does it look like?
Yeah, so we all know about, well, not all of us know, but we're here talking about, there's the fluctuation of the hormones throughout the month, right? And so as we enter into a phase called perimenopause, it's just a phase that could last like for like 10 years plus. Just to give you some statistics, like the average age of menopause is 51 to 52. And menopause is just that moment in time when we haven't had a period for 1 year. But unfortunately, that pause in time doesn't just come out of nowhere. Again, like 10 years before we reach that age of menopause, we might experience the changes that come with the fluctuations of hormones. And that could look like anything from hot flashes. Yes, hot flashes in our early 40s, hot flashes in our mid 40s. That's just the most basic kind of thing that we think of first when we think of women going through hormonal changes. But also like mood changes, joint pain, changes in libido, changes in our reproductive health just in general, all these things, insomnia. So these are all things that could come with the hormonal fluctuation that we experience. And again, for some women, it could last 10 years plus. So it's really differentiating like perimenopause, which is like that slow transition, usually marked first by period or menstrual changes. And then that little moment, a little blip in time, which is menopause, where it's been officially 1 year where we've had no period. And that's when we officially enter into like postmenopausal time.
And then with that, with those symptoms, I'm going to run through, I have like a little list of some of the symptoms. You've named some of them. What would you recommend? So obviously everyone is different and like creating a plan is individualized, but just speaking from just an overview of where people can take this. So when they have mood changes, what are some things that you might recommend?
Yeah. So one thing that I might recommend is just tracking throughout the month to see if that mood change is all month or is it worse maybe before the cycle comes on or you start to bleed. So tracking is like one of the first things that I tell people to do. Just track your mood around your cycle. The second thing that I might do is like look at some blood work. What might be contributing to these changes? Is there like a nutritional deficiency? For a lot of women, things come up, like autoimmune diseases come up in the perimenopause time too. Are you experiencing a lot of pain and that's adding to like mood changes as well? And is this pain coming from a root cause like an autoimmune condition, for example? Is it coming from fatigue? Are you tired and that's why your mood is low? And is your mood low because you're experiencing thyroid changes? We could figure that out in blood work as well. And, in the like conventional medicine world, like I would say like a lot of lab ranges are sick or not sick. Like if you don't fall into the range of sick or not sick, which is usually a number range, then there's nothing wrong. But we might be on one end of the range that's creeping up towards sick and or deficient, for example, in the case of nutrients. And optimizing that number might be really helpful when it comes to our mood. So that's probably like the first thing I will do is just collect data, collect where you are throughout the month and you're experiencing these symptoms, and also collect data around like your blood work and your numbers.
Yeah, and I think the changes in sexual desire and trouble concentrating and trouble sleeping kind of fall under that realm as well of like tracking and collecting the data. And then for more physical manifestations like headaches, night sweats, hot flashes, vaginal dryness, where like the physical body is showing symptoms, what are some things that you recommend?
Yeah. Yeah. So when the physical body is showing things, like I have to say that it comes down to management because unfortunately we can't turn the clock back and say that your body's not going to go through this change. But there are certain things that we could do to help mitigate those symptoms that you're having so your quality of life is better. And it could be as simple as like magnesium to help you sleep,
Mhm.
what I mean?
Mhm.
It could be as simple as safe herbals. And again, I'm not saying everybody needs to go out and buy these things, but like black cohosh, which has pretty good studies to help with like hot flashes and the fluctuation of hormones that we do experience at that point in life. So it just really depends on like the individual, what they're going through, because everybody does not go through the same things. And just creating a plan so you feel empowered to use these tools as these things come up for you.
Yeah, like curating. And I like that it's kind of, instead of you're not going to cure
Yeah, no.
perimenopause. It's not going to happen. We're not
No.
going to turn back the time, but there are things to kind of create some ease, to relieve discomfort, to feel empowered, even just the ability to feel empowered around this transition. So it's acceptance, it's empowering to kind of have a plan.
Yeah, because there's so many women that I work with who are like, I feel like my body is working against me. Like, what is happening? And I'm like, no, this is normal. You should know that this is normal. I'm not dismissing what you're going through by saying that, but it's kind of empowering to know, oh, this is why it's happening. This is, that could change your experience of that transition completely when you know, oh, this is normal, and it's normal to experience these things. And there's also things I could do to help.
Yeah, support your body, support your mental health around these changes versus like fearing it, feeling like your body's failing you, or yeah, that kind of disassociation and feeling disoriented around that, or feeling like, I think, our culture is so heavily drawn on age and like stigmatizing aging and anti-aging and all of these things. And instead, like, I think there is this movement now of, with well-being being a big focus of people and longevity, it's not about turning back the clock. It's not about reversing things or even slowing things down. It's about embracing things, enhancing some things to help with experiences or relieving, discomfort, creating ease in the body. Like I mentioned, like just acceptance of, this is a normal human thing that we go through. People age, and rather than resisting and fighting it and fearing it, it's welcoming it, having a plan around it, and supporting yourself through it. And then I've come across and seen things about it. And so that's what, like, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I know that, like, I'm not there yet, but I'm going to be approaching my 40s, and it's nice to know what the next decade's going to look like for me, and having this conversation around perimenopause and menopause. And I've noticed some shifts in my own menstrual cycle and in my body already. And I've talked to, like, my sister who she went through early menopause. And so one of the things I've seen pop up on my radar is hormone therapy. Can you explain that and what that is, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I think that hormone therapy has come up, and I think it's actually a great thing. And there's different kinds of hormone therapy, and it could range from herbal, supplemental, to like bioidentical hormones or synthetic hormone replacement therapy. And I think it's an area that, I think has a lot of stigma around it. Unfortunately, just historically, how things were dispensed in the past have changed, and it has made it a lot safer. There's more considerations now than there was at a moment in time when maybe women were getting estrogen therapy alone and experienced the symptoms of that. Now, when we're talking about hormone replacement, a lot of women will get like combination, like estrogen and progesterone. And it could be bioidentical, meaning looking a lot like our actual hormone, but it comes from nature. And so there's a lot of women who struggle with like vaginal dryness or frequent UTIs that is linked to the reproductive changes that we might experience as we go through the hormone fluctuation. And it kind of really is life changing for them, you know? So like I'm more like on the mindset that we should give women these tools, because it's not something that, people really talked about, and a lot of women suffer in silence as a result, or they're too scared to use things that actually are really safe.
Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, because I do think it seems like a hot button topic and a lot of opinions around it, or fears or concerns. And it's just kind of like everything else, like maybe early iterations were introduced or used in ways that shouldn't have been. And it's kind of allowing time and science and things to, and also looking back at, like, ancestrally how people used medicines and plant medicines and naturally derived products, and kind of incorporating. I like the incorporation of both modern technology and healthcare, as well as, ancestral plant-based holistic approaches and where those meet and can work together.
And like everybody's plan could look a little different. Like maybe a supplement is just fine for person A, but maybe for person B, because of their history or whatever, they need the hormone replacement to have that good quality of life. So I think it's removing the judgment around what women do to help regulate their bodies and just being like, what makes you feel good here? And also presenting the risks. Like even when it comes to like the birth control conversation, telling them, okay, this is what you could possibly expect. So at least when those things happen, you're not shocked, that you
Exactly.
had like that informed decision-making process.
Yeah. Yeah, I love having when you're coming to these precipices and trying to make decisions around your body, especially being fully informed of all options, pros and cons, and then being able to make informed decisions is what and like autonomous, like with full control and sovereignty of our bodies is really, really important. And I think more people, and I hope by listening to these types of podcasts, reading books like this, seeing TikToks around this information empowers people, because I think that's whether it's within sexual health, no matter what it is for your own body, feeling empowered and feeling informed is so important for me and my wish for everybody.
Yes, yes, yeah. We're living a lot longer, right, than maybe past generations, and like we have to manage the things that come with living a lot longer. So
Sustainability in terms of like longevity
exactly.
and what are the practices we're doing? What are we doing? What are we consuming? And I think that's another thing that people aren't maybe privy to, is that it's great to learn, when we were talking about the relational thing, of perhaps in your 20s learning about fertility and menopause, perimenopause earlier than just when it starts happening and you're like, what's going on in my body? Like that moment of like, now I'm ready to have a kid, or I'm not ready yet and I want to look into egg freezing, or whatever it is. Within there's certain age ranges that people kind of start to get word of this, or like their social circles start talking about these things. And then you're like, oh, it's on my radar. Now I have to deal with it. But instead, like knowing in advance what's coming, and then kind of helping know like, oh, this is where my plan would go, and being kind of open to like, yeah, 10 years from now, there might be completely new technologies and new information. And
Yeah, 100%. Like let's be like proactive instead of reactionary. Yeah.
yes,
Let's
yeah,
be proactive, because I think that would be so good, just even for mental health, which goes into like quality of life. Because yeah, no, I've seen like women just enter a really bad, like not bad place, but a really low place. Just dealing with these changes that sound like on the surface level, they don't sound that like like what? Oh, you have some joint, like it's things that people would kind of brush off as like, oh, you're fine. You're fine. It's just aging. And it's like, what? That's all you're going to say without giving some support? There's people who can't leave their bedroom because they're afraid that they're gonna like go into public and bleed, because they're bleeding so heavily because of these hormonal changes. There's women feel so much anxiety and it's hard to function in their everyday life. So there's so many things that just I wish more people knew they could be supported through it.
right. Because there's lots of shame, especially with women's bodies, or people with ovaries, people who have had babies, and the symptoms post giving birth, all of these things, and then we kind of hold it, carry it, and live in shame from it. And one of the things we kind of touched on it is the holistic healthcare. I wanted to kind of come back to that because it is an approach that maybe is new for some people, or people, are so used to just seeing their primary care physician through their, insurance, and not to like, it's not about like Western, Eastern medicine, but with holistic medicine, it is a different approach, and it can sometimes seem inaccessible for people because they might not be familiar with that. Do you have any information or want to share anything for people who have never heard of like Chinese medicine practitioners or holistic healthcare providers, and how they can access people like yourself?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely I would say There's so much in the healthcare space. And like, I feel like you mentioned earlier, people would discover a lot of these things through TikTok, through like social media, Instagram. Like, they're like, oh, there's a doctor that I could see that's natural. Yes. And I think the good thing about living now in our time is that there's so many educational programs online where you could like get a program and learn more about your body from there. And it could be more affordable than going for an office visit, which I still think is important. But if you wanted to like learn more about holistic medicine, then that would be a good place to start if you know that maybe right now it's not within your budget. It's just like finding a holistic practitioner that is certified, has gone through the appropriate schooling, and could support you indirectly. The good thing about now also is that in the past, a lot of like even naturopathic medicine, which is the primary medicine I practice, wasn't covered by insurance, but now it is. So people with all kinds of insurance have access to naturopathic medicine now. The whole insurance conversation is a difficult one because even though people have coverage, they might have high deductibles. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother complication. But I would say like the first step would just be finding somebody who is qualified, maybe looking first for some kind of educational program and then going from there to help support yourself. But it does historically have like a reputation for being expensive or not accessible. But I think right now in the like what we call like the functional medicine, holistic medicine, health space, there are a lot of ways that we could explore our health, but like it always comes back down to the basics. Like how's your nutrition? How's your sleep? How's your movement? Like it always comes back to those main things. And so yes, it could get more complex, but I think there's a lot we could do just in the simple areas of life that are accessible to everybody. Again, nutrition could not, that gets complicated too in terms of what people could afford, their accessibility to certain foods. So I think the conversation could get very nuanced around that. But, no matter what space you're in, there's always somewhere you could start.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I do think a lot of people don't even know that sometimes their health insurance providers now include functional medicine, holistic medicine. For the longest time, even chiropractic medicine was not included. And so these things, and like I had health insurance at one point, and I remember it included like Reiki, like included massage. And so I think people, have their insurance and they think like, oh, I just have to go once a year to my annual checkup. And it's like, no, dig into what is being provided to you because there are so many resources. One more thing I wanted to add is now a lot of cities are including things like public talks and forums and panel talks with providers like yourself at like libraries and things that are at no cost that just provide information support, whether you're, going through like you just had a baby or, you're going through perimenopause. There's all these different stages in life and it might be bigger cities, but even smaller municipalities are starting to provide different healthcare public services that aren't just like clinical and not just, and those are great too and amazing and having like, roadside check-in clinics and things that provide for community. But I know that there are resources and things being put out into the world that maybe we're not privy to because we just, it's not on our TikToks, it's not on our social media. But there are, if you look at your local library, if you look at your government page for like New York City has a huge one, and there's so much healthcare information for all genders, all ages, and they do actually create programming around supporting whether it's functional medicine, healthcare. They have a lot of informational resources. So I just wanted to encourage people to kind of empower yourself by being curious.
Yeah, yes. There's so much at our fingertips. It could be overwhelming, but like you're right though. It's out there. So yeah, thanks for saying that. That's really important. Yeah.
And then just to wrap up, is there anything you'd like to share on what you're working on or how people can find you?
Yeah. So I practice at Collaborative Natural Health Partners in Connecticut, in Manchester, Connecticut specifically. And so that's my main source of what I'm doing is just working at that clinic in Connecticut. We also offer like virtual appointments. So that's something that is available for many people living in Connecticut. That whole conversation can get complicated too. And, that is basically where I'm active. I'm not very active on social media, to be honest. Wish I was more, maybe one day, but I am on Instagram at Dr. Mary Tracey. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, I think because of the work that you do, it's very locally
Yeah.
centralized versus
Mhm.
like expansive and like mass. And so what your work is very like nuanced, very one-on-one. And so yeah, I think it would be nice if people, if they wanted to reach out to you, they can find you through Instagram, but through your practice within Connecticut is the best way. And then is there anything we missed or that you wanted to bring up? Or is there anything that
No, I think we covered a lot,
yeah.
and just hope it helps someone out there.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you for having me here.
And congratulations on your
Oh,
engagement.
thank you.
Please tell
Thank you.
Anthony I said congratulations as well.
I will. Yeah, I will.
And enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Special thanks to all of our guests. Head South is hosted by Kat Meyer, produced by Isis Barlow, edited by Megan Hook, with music by Lily Rezi Rothman, graphics by Ella Chodos Irvine, cover art by Gina Ship Casey, and intro by Murph Meyer.